Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give folks a couple of moments to get settled in. We've got about a minute or two until we're going to start. So welcome in and we'll get started in just a second. If you'd like to pop your name and your where you're from into the chat, you're more than welcome to. You're going to be receiving the sign-in sheet in just a moment. We're going to give folks just a few more moments to trickle in as they come back for lunch. Hopefully everybody was able to step away and get a nice yummy goodie to hold them over for this afternoon, because we've got some really amazing conversations happening this afternoon that I'm really looking forward to. So hopefully you've grabbed your food and your drink and you're about ready to get started. We're going to give them just another moment or two. Trying to watch for people, and if you aren't in the right room, this is those special tweens. So hopefully this is the room you were planning to be in. And we'll give folks just a couple of moments to get set up. Make sure that you've grabbed your drink and your snack for the afternoon, and we'll get started in just a moment. Thank you for being here.
I'm just going to say hi, Tyler. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yay, okay. Thank you.
Perfect. We're so glad to have you here and it working. So we're just going to give it one more minute, and then, because I see people trickling in, and then we'll get started. Okay, and in the essence of making sure we stay on target with our time, I'm going to get started. My name is Tyler Chadwell English, and I'm your room host today, or MC. Welcome to the 2021 Maryland Teen Reconnect Conference. Hopefully this isn't your first session, but it is. Welcome. We've got a lot of great discussions going on this afternoon. This session is Those Special Tweens with presenters Cheryl Deshawn, Library 2, Baltimore County Public Library, Anita Delp, YA Librarian Associate 2, Cecil County Public Library, and Julie Naylor, Instruction and Research Specialist, Howard County Library System. Again, my name is Tyler Chadwell English, and I'll be your Zoom host today. We are in a Zoom meeting, so I wanted to share some quick tips and tricks. You are probably all experts at Zoom at this point, but just in case you don't know, bottom left-hand corner from a laptop, option for mute and stop video. Please mute yourself while you are not talking. As the host, I can mute you, so if I notice there's a lot of background noise, don't stress too much about it. If you're having trouble muting yourself, I can help you with that. Feel free to stop your video as well if you'd like. We're just glad to have you here. We don't have to see you, but we love seeing your smiling faces if it's possible. If you are calling via phone, you can use *6 to mute yourself. Please use the chat to ask questions or raise your hand during the Q&A section of today's presentation. To raise your hand, select the reactions button or press 9 if calling in via phone. You may have an older version of Zoom where you do not have the raise your hand emoticon. If that's the case, please just put raise hand in chat, and we'll do our best to get to you. In the top right-hand corner from a laptop, you can choose between speaker view and gallery view. If you are having any tech issues, please share in the chat and someone from the planning community will assist you. There are several of us in the room here right now, including Kat, who's about to drop in the attendance sheet in the chat, and that'll help get us started. So Kat, if you wouldn't mind dropping in the attendance sheet for the first time in the chat, that would be great. You need to fill that out with your email and your name in the library. After the session, we'll send CE forms, an evaluation, and a recording, if available, via email. Today will be part presentation and part discussion, which means there will be plenty of time for questions. We ask that you hold your questions until all the presentations are finished. If you're worried that you will forget your question, feel free to type it in chat, and we will answer them later in the session. When it's time for the Q&A portion of the session, you are welcome to raise your hand via Zoom or type the question in the chat. And we ask that you wait to be called on to ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak. Before we would get started, we want to go over a few agreements to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And that is the ropes agreement. And if you have ever been in a session with Carrie Sanders, or if you were here for this morning's meeting, you have seen these agreements before. And this is an agreement between the group of us and how we will behave during this time together. And the ropes agreement goes as follows: R for respect, respecting yourself and others. O for open, be open to other ideas and ways of looking at things. Ouchie, oops is okay, is an indication that mistakes will be made, and sometimes we will say the wrong thing, and that's okay. We acknowledge that. Participate in past, just make sure that if you're like me, you don't talk too much, and make sure others get a chance to say what they need to say. Escuchar, which is Spanish for listen. So, really listen and hear what others have to say. Be open to the experience. Be here and be in the moment and what's happening. Be sensitive, and an S for sensitive and safe space. We're hoping to create a safe space here to have these discussions where we can have an open dialogue and feel free to talk with each other in that way. So that is all you're going to hear from me today. I'm going to pass it along to your first presenter, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you have any other agreements that you found really useful, we like to see them dropped in the chat. If you think that there's something we should see, please drop that in the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing, and you folks can go ahead and start the presentation.
Should we go ahead and just introduce ourselves real quick? Okay, I'm Anita Delp. I work at the Northeast branch, which is the new building in Cecil County Public Library. I am a YA library associate, and I've been with Cecil County Public Library for about 5 years. Started out part-time and then moved to the small Northeast branch a few years ago as full-time. And I've been here in the new building since April. And we deal with the whole gamut in our teen room. So we have young children to adults in here. So we see everyone. Cheryl, you want to go next?
Sure, thanks. I'm Cheryl Deshawn, and I am the Teen Engagement Coordinator and Librarian at the Hereford branch of Baltimore County Public Library. I have been there for a little over 5 years, at BCPL for a little over 10 years. And before that, I was at Enoch Pratt for a little over 10 years as well.
Okay, and I'm Julie. I'm from Howard County Library System. I'm actually an adult instructor, but I've been working with teens probably for 7 or 8 years, and I've worked in the system for about 15. So I'm excited to be here. It's my first time being a host on a panel, so I'm really excited to have that opportunity.
Okay, Julie, are you gonna share the screen? Okay.
Yes.
And while she's getting that up, just a little bit more background on me. I was a speech therapist and a special education teacher for somewhere around 20-ish years or so. And in both of those roles, I worked with all age groups from birth to adult. So I do have a wide range of experience with age groups. The last probably 10 years, I've worked more with the adolescent group. So that's probably the freshest age group on my mind. Okay, if you could go to the next slide, please. So tween, what does that word even mean? Research tells us that there's not really a solid definition of that word, but generally it can range from between the ages of 7 to 15, believe it or not, depending on who you're reading. And I generally tend to think of it as the ages between 9 and 12, kind of, pre-adolescent age. So I have bonsai brains there, and you can think about what you think that might mean while I'm talking about it. So what I'm really talking about there is, you know how bonsai works. You're growing this tree, and then you kind of snip away at it as it's growing, and it trains into something that you want it to eventually look like. So So that's kind of what's happening with the adolescent brain. All these neurons are, just growing, and they're making all these new connections in their brains. And at the same time, their brains are doing some pruning, and that's the official word, the technical word that they use. So what that means is the skills that the child has learned up to this point. They're constantly learning new things, but the things that they practice over and over and over, you've heard practice makes perfect. That's not necessarily true, but it does make permanent. So all those neurons that are growing and the ones that are being practiced over and over are becoming cemented in the brain. And so basically, this is a time in their lives where their brain is being formed and shaped into what it will be in adulthood. So what are the things that are important at this time? All of the life skills that you would think, are obviously very important, but one of the most important things during this time is socialization. We tend to, I think, look at socialization and teens hanging out as something that's just kind of, just for fun, or maybe something that's a little bit frivolous or trivial. But it's actually extremely important to the tween and teen brain, but even more so the tweens in this, 7 to 15 age group, because they're learning from their peers what's going to be important and what's going to be acceptable in their age group, as well as what the adults in their lives are placing importance on. And they're learning that more so through social interactions than anything that they could learn through reading or videos or anything like that, or direct instruction. So why is this important? Why do we care what the teens need? I mean, for me, it's kind of a touchy subject, because I think a lot of times teens and tweens get a bad rap. A lot of people might not necessarily want to work with teens because they see them as problematic or bothersome. But it's important because we need to know what's going on in their brains in order to know how to deal with their behaviors. All those chemicals that are flooding their brains, that are causing all these neuron pruning, it changes their behavior. And I think it's good to remember that teens don't necessarily, and tweens don't necessarily want to be problematic. I have a good example of during, I guess it was our first or second week of opening, we had a teen who got in trouble because he threw a shoe over the indoor balcony. And I wasn't there when it happened. So when I came back and I saw the teen, and I was talking to him, and I said, so I hear you threw a shoe. And he said, yeah, and I got in trouble. And I went, okay, so can you just tell me, what was going through your mind? And he said, well, like, my friend was trying to leave without me and I wanted to get his attention, so I just threw my shoe. And through conversation and just talking to him about it, he honestly didn't realize that could be a problem, that, maybe I need to look at, there's other people walking around here. So, just knowing that they don't always think about what we're thinking about. So it's good to be able to just have conversations with them and just assume positive intent, that they don't necessarily mean harm. They just need guidance and direction. So the impact of COVID-19, as we all know, this has just been a really trying time for everyone. I think it's been especially hard on this age group because the socialization piece is so important to them and to their development. And it's just a tricky time to navigate in the best of times. They've experienced a lot of added stress that, we might not have necessarily experienced when we were their age, because they've been locked up in their homes, or, things have been changing, and, there's a lot of things changing in their lives anyway. And so all these added changes is just compounding the stress on them. Let's see. I think that was all I wanted to say about that. And then seeking attention. So yeah, a lot of times also, kids have the same basic needs as everyone else. And at this age group, because they're testing boundaries, because they're, pruning those neurons, they do a lot of things to seek attention, and we need to give that to them in positive ways. Am I running out of time, Tyler? Yeah, okay, so can we go to the next slide real quick, and I'll just kind of real fast. So some of the things that we can do to help is provide programs that work for tweens. And some of the things that work here in Cecil County are series, because they crave that, it gives them some structure and some routine. Passive activities, something that they can just realize that when they're in this space, there's going to be something sitting there for them. And I can talk about that a little later if you have questions about it. And pop-up programs, just to serve the kids who are here, and kind of making sure that we know what they're interested in, so that we can always have something ready for them. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to spend that much time. So I'm going to throw it over to Cheryl.
We're good. We're good.
Thank you. So I was just going to throw out some of the specific things that we've done. So when I was at the North Point branch of Baltimore County, it was a less economically advantaged community. So when I offered programs, especially if I offered snacks, treats and candies, things like that, I had a better response at that branch. So, at the current branch, they're not really motivated by those kinds of things, because it's a very advantaged economic area for the most part. I mean, we have our, we have some different communities, but for the most part, it's a pretty affluent area. And for the most part, our teens are overbooked, especially before COVID. It was just hard to find the time, that when they had time to squeeze in a program or an event. And so I found out, I started a teen advisory board a few years ago, and found out that Saturdays at noon was like the sweet spot where they had a little bit of time where they weren't scheduled. And, I didn't want to make them get up too early in the mornings, knowing that they need that sleep, at that age. And so I went from so at my previous branch, it was more like anime, manga, and the gaming. I did a little bit of yoga instruction and writing group type things. I have a master's in creative writing. And then so at the current branch in Hereford, we've done some gaming. Usually it's more of like a pop-up, like Anita was saying, when they're around, then, it's like, okay, well, we have these gaming systems, or we have the board games. We've had more interest in arts. So like right now they're interested in origami and tie-dye and, different kinds of drawing. We've done drawing and exquisite corpse instruction. We're lucky to have a part-time librarian on our staff who is also a college art instructor. So she offers some really great programs. And we are the Arts Center of Excellence for Baltimore County. So we have a space called the Hive, which is a maker space. We have a glow forge. So we have a lot of really cool stuff. It's just a matter of getting them in. And they come in to study, and they're very focused, they're like there to do their studies. So lately, some of the things that I've found is using the whiteboard. We finally were able to get a whiteboard hung up on the wall in the teen area. And so every week I change the question or the challenge. And they have been interacting with that. We've had the big coloring table covers where we put out the colored pencils, and everybody can color a little part of that. That was, that's been successful. We have a big Connect 4 that we were able to purchase with some money that the Youth and Family Engagement Office gave us, along with some other things like the Switch game. And then so we're planning some things like blackout poetry and other art projects, maybe using the Glowforge and creating some pieces that they could then decorate. It lends itself well to either jewelry art or like holiday ornament kind of things. We've had collage, collage materials out in the hive where people can make their own collages or vision boards. And I see somebody asked about age limits to use the Glowforge. The Glowforge really has to be used by librarians who are trained on how to use it. We haven't yet gotten to the point where it's not like the 3D printer where you can go on Tinkercad and create your own design and then print it out. But so we're also undergoing some change. I'm going to try to wrap it up quickly. I know I'm only supposed to use 5 minutes, but so we went from, I was kind of loosey-goosey with the teen advisory board where I found out what they wanted. They wanted to talk about horror books. I don't read horror. I don't watch horror. I had to figure out what in the heck, that was all about, and just to be able to sort of facilitate the discussion. And, we did things like books into movies, comics and graphic novels, talking about what our favorites were. And then when we went into the COVID lockdown, we went over to meeting virtually. And so that worked because we were able to still have discussions. And once we were doing curbside pickup, I could put things out for craft, like online, you do it on your end and I'll do it on this end. Or one time we made crepes where we all were, in the kitchen and I had provided the recipe, and then we made the crepes together but apart. And so now, though, we are moving to a teen leadership council. I'm receiving applications right now. I've received 2. I just sent out the applications to my contacts on Friday, so that I'm going to call that a win. They still have a couple of weeks to get the applications in, but I'm going to let them take more charge of leading the meetings and planning the programming and making more changes that they want in the branch and taking over. And I'll take it away, Julie.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I'm screen sharing. Okay, so in case you can't tell, I'm in my branch, so that is why I have to wear a mask, so I apologize for that. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so, all right, so I have been working with the Tweens, like I said, for probably 7 or 8 years at the Central Branch in Howard County. I love working with Tweens because they are a unique age group, so they are distinct developmentally from children and older teens. Working with tweens, I classify it as a stinky job, but that's just because of the physical changes that our young tweens are going through. So, as you guys are aware, they have many body and physical changes happening. Few smells are as pungent as a middle school classroom, I will warn you. But during this time, students' bodies are just one of the things that are changing for them. Physical changes can be really distressing for a tween. So worries about height, weight, acne, cracking voice, things like that. amongst many others, can be very distressing for a tween. But also, like Anita said, their behaviors are changing too. So they sometimes have a loss of interest in things that they cared about, and they're sometimes interested in discovering new things. So that's a good opportunity for us as librarians to expose them to different things in the library. They also begin to really start testing their boundaries. And so, as was mentioned prior to me, that's something that you'll definitely see in your branch and in your classes with the tweens. They also start to care a lot more about fitting in, and they are more concerned with being embarrassed in front of their peers. So that's also something to keep in mind as you are planning. Friendships start to become a lot more important in this age group. So Anita was talking about socialization being so critical. Yeah, friends start to become almost more important than family. So these relationships that they're building become just so essential to them. And during this time, it's a really awkward period where they are taken from their elementary school where they're comfortable socially, and they have almost a comfort zone, and they're sent to middle school. And for most students, middle school is a new experience for them, and it's not something that they're used to, and they are often redistricted to where they are separated from the friend groups and peer groups that they had in elementary school. So this is something that's really tough on our tweens. And it's something to keep in mind, because a lot of times when tweens are having issues socially finding friends and things in middle school, the parents and the students look elsewhere to try and build these friendships and these socialization opportunities. So for us, that means that we get a lot of students who are looking to socialize in our classes. So something to sort of keep in mind as you're planning for that as well. Okay, and so let me go to my next slide. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about developing your classes and your programs for tweens. So ways that you could improve your offerings and maybe build your attendance. So I would like to say, oh, sorry. Keeps popping up on me. Okay, so in terms of developing a lure to get students to come in and to build your attendance in class, here are several things that I've done at my branch. Obviously, marketing is extremely important. So whether it is developing signage or whether it is creating a class calendar that's just for tweens and teens that you can hand out at your classes, that's something that's worked really well for me. Usually when students come to my classes, they leave with a calendar, and that way they know when to come back. So that's something you could pursue if it's something that you're not doing already. So I would also say that promoting your classes plays a big role. I would also, it seems a little counterintuitive, but I would suggest planning more classes. So even if you don't have a lot right now, the more classes you plan, the more customers that will come back in. So if you start creating regular opportunities for them, they're going to be exposed to more options and be more likely to come back. So build for them and they'll come to you. So I would also say grab their interests. So you could show them a cool concept. You could advertise an experiment, do challenges, even offer prizes. And these are perfect things to put in your class description or something like that that would appeal to either a student or a parent. So what's your lure to get these students in your door and to your classes? So fun and games. We obviously know that tweens, kids, teens all love fun and games. So trivia, escape rooms, scavenger hunts. I've had Pictionary work well, but the students didn't know what Pictionary was, so I had to give it a different name that they could understand. Gaming, even make and takes, where you sort of would do either a craft or something like that. The lure of something tangible for the student to take home with them can sometimes be very attractive. So advertise it in your description. I also highly encourage you to pair them up. Teamwork is a huge motivator for these students and their parents. So as we've talked about, building friendships is really hard in this age, and I do get a lot of students that are looking to socialize or looking for friends. So if you pair them up, they'll have a better time, and parents and students are both looking for this. So advertise something in your description, like join a team, teamwork, use the word group, or even bring a friend, suggest that, and you might get even more attendance to your class. And this is something that'll sort of help them develop some social skills that are quite essential. I also recommend that you use technology as a draw. I'm sure that many of you are using technology already in your classes, but make sure that you are highlighting them in your descriptions. So things like using Qblets. People might not understand what Qblets are, so try to use words that they'll recognize. So rather than saying Qblets, or in addition to saying Qblets, maybe it would be worthwhile to say modular robotics or something like that. That might be a little bit more understandable to somebody who's not familiar with a Qblet. Hex bugs, that's something I've used that's very successful with tweens. They really like them. You could even do the bristle bots. Those are all over the internet. You could try and model that for the tweens. Lego robotics, coding, I would just make sure you put that tech that you plan to use in your description. It can be a big draw, but also give a demonstration at the local schools or outreach events to promote that tech. That's always a good option for you too. I encourage you to also, with your classes, get active. So adding some sort of movement can be very appealing for the tweens and keep their interest. Relays, things like that, physical challenges. Obviously you have to work with the sort of the rules of your branches as to how much physical activity and things they can have, but that's always a good option. And always seek tween feedback on how the classes are actually going. So like I've done Jeopardy in my system, and after it, I'll put up a board and give the students an opportunity to write what other Jeopardies they would want to see at the library. So let's go. So these are some of the things that have worked for me at Howard County. So we are very interested in STEM, not just the library, but our students. So we have a lot of STEM classes, but they're very well attended for us. So I usually do Lego engineering, and that's something where I would give them challenges on what they would build. So usually in a class, we probably won't get through more than 4 or 5 challenges as a max. And this is something that I converted online and did virtually, and that has been really popular with the tween age. I've taught genetics at the Central Branch as a series. So don't be afraid to handle a big concept and sort of highlight sections that you think are important. So for genetics, one of the things we did was DNA. Like DNA is not a concept that is too advanced for a tween. So don't be afraid to handle a big topic or something that is a little bit more advanced. Teens were very interested in doing human body. We got a lot of aspiring doctors, young doctors who want to come to class and learn about different parts of the body and different organ systems. I did that one as a series. I think it was about 6 weeks. So we do also have some success with series. And then I've done binary code and engineering at my branch. And then we also do some historical STEM. So is it like the Titanic, or is it mummies, or just a little tie-in with history can grab a student who maybe not that interested in STEM, but they are interested in history. So giving that extra little twist to make them more engaged with the concept can sometimes help. So always challenges are great. Jeopardies are great. Some fandom classes. So if you have Percy Jackson fans at your library, plan a Percy Jackson class. So I've done crafting Camp Half-Blood at my branch, and even National History Day. I don't know how many, certainly Howard County works very closely with Maryland Humanities for National History Day. It works very successfully for us. This is not a class that I developed, but it is something that we do in our system. Any of these classes that you're interested in hearing more about, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'm always happy to share. But I think we're going to give you an opportunity to ask us some questions.
Thank you so much, Anita, Cheryl, and Julie. That was really, really interesting. And I'm so glad that you were able to share those things with us, because I think that's really going to jumpstart the conversation. We've already got a couple of questions here in the chat. So the first question was, Julie, when you do demo at school, although anyone can answer this, when you do demo at schools, who do you go through? Media specialists, subject teachers?
Sure. So for us, we work really closely with our media specialist counterparts in the school system. And so that's primarily who we would go through. Occasionally, we will receive requests from teachers individually, but our point of entry into a school is always through a media specialist.
The next question in the chat was, for series programs, do you require them to sign up for all of them, or can they sign up for a single session? And I think that goes to all of you.
For us, it depends on what it is. If it's something that builds one session after another, then we would have them sign up for the whole series at once. But typically, we try to just make it so that they're able to drop in, because we don't want to exclude someone if they weren't able to come to the first one. We just want people to be able to come to as many as they can. But yeah, it depends for us.
Yeah, we try to do standalone programs at our branch, just so that people who do have really busy schedules can come to the one program and and get something out of it.
So at my branch, I've done both ways. So I have done some series where they don't have to attend each class. So for example, I mentioned doing the human body class. That I did as a 6-week series, and each class was about a different organ system. And so I did it to where you could just drop in. It wasn't a retained knowledge that needed to be held through each one. So if a student was more interested in learning about the heart and the cardiovascular system, they could come to that. They didn't have to necessarily attend all of them. So it's all about how you structure your class, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that a little bit. So I have a teen action group. We changed our teen advisory group to teen action group this year. And so we've decided we're going to be doing more of a community service sort of approach to it. So we're going to be doing shorter term projects. So that way it is a series, but the kids don't have to come in every month. They can drop in for the activity that we have going on this month. If they don't like what's happening next month, they don't have to attend, or if they can't. So we do try to keep it so that it makes sense to drop in month by month rather than having to attend each one.
Great, thanks. We've got a lot of other really good questions here. So Jay asks, to what extent does your library allow you to carve out a tween space? And then someone else asked a similar question. Jessica asked, how do you balance the teen space between tweens and the older teens? And do you tailor programs for different, do you tailor different programs for older and younger teens? And Julie, could you please stop screen sharing if possible?
Oh, sorry.
So I can speak to the space a little bit. In the new Northeast branch, we have what's called our teen center. And it's got a Nintendo Switch, and it's got some really fun furniture, and we keep a couple of activity tables going where we have passive activities going at all times. The challenge there is that it is open to all ages. So what we've started trying to do is keep activities on the activity tables that will interest different age levels, in the hopes that they, the age level that the activity is geared for will attract that age group. It's a work in progress. If anybody else has any thoughts about that, I'd love to hear it. As far as programming though, and keeping ages separate, so my partner in this branch is doing a manga anime club, and she was getting such a large volume that she had to split it. And so she's now going to have two manga anime groups, a middle school and a high school group. So that's how we're managing that.
Yeah, we don't really have a separated space, and occasionally I will give an age range that might be a little lower or a little higher depending on what we're doing. I try to avoid using the word tween. I don't think anybody between the age of 9 and 13 likes that word. So, you know, I just call them teens. And I've seen teen advisory boards that split into like the senior advisors and then the junior advisors. So I think that's a nice way to do it. You know, like if you have a big group, I was even thinking about sort of a mentoring where, you know, if we're breaking into different groups to work on different projects, you know, we have like somebody from the, you know, junior senior level, and then someone, you know, so that they can work together and sort of mentor younger ones.
Yeah, I'll add to that the advisory group question. We're lucky to have a very large teen advisory group, and I actually have an executive board, which is they stay all year in their position and they're voted in. But then we have committee chairs that rotate in throughout the year every 6 months, at 3 to 6 months, depending on how things are going. But we specifically have a committee. We have committee chairs, and we specifically have a committee for we call it the middle school committee. So that encourages them to be a part of to be leaders, but also to have their own voices be heard. And then if things work the way they're supposed to, then they sort of graduate up into the executive committee.
Yeah, I would agree that at my branch, we don't have a carved out area. I would love to, but we do not have that space. So we do the best that we can. So sometimes I'll try to highlight different sections of that collection, of our teen collection, in terms of giving them a priority in terms of display. So that way they'll find their books easier, or they'll have. See, our books are sort of divided. Some of our tween books are in children's and some are in teen. So they tend to bounce between the two areas for us. But I do 100% plan differently for classes for tweens than I would for a teen. And I would agree that they do not like to be called tweens.
Someone asked specifically about spaces to go along with that, Julie, if you guys felt it was better to try and engage tweens in the children's area or in the teens area.
So I think you could engage them in either. Because there is a lot of crossover in terms of, like, for my branch, we have books in both collections. Sometimes it's a really empowering experience for a young tween to go to teen and go to the teen section and pick up a book there. It can be very empowering for them. Sometimes they get just a good sense of pride of reading up. They feel very advanced. It makes them feel older, and yeah, it's a good experience for them.
I agree with that, Julie. We have in the teen center, the books that we have in there are the Y graphic novel and nonfiction books, but we also have what we call our transitional YA. So it's just one very small section of YA books that we think are appropriate for younger teens. And so, yeah, we do see some of that, you know, the younger kids coming in and going, ooh, you know, I get to get a YA book. And it's pretty exciting to see them to get excited about reading about what they see as above their level. So yeah, I agree with that.
Thanks. Carmen, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you very much for sharing your expertise today. I have a question about if I was introducing a tween book club, what are your suggestions for the components of that that are distinctive from a regular teen book club? Asking for a friend.
Can I jump in there? So I had two book clubs going. This has been a couple of years ago. I had a high school and a middle school book club. And what seemed to work better for me for the middle school as opposed to the high school was to have them each reading their own thing and just coming in to share the book that they were interested in. They didn't seem to be as excited at that age, and it may have just been my group of kids, I don't know, but they didn't seem to be as interested in all reading the same thing and discussing that as they did, reading their own thing, and then every month come in and be excited to share with their friends, and then they would recommend books to each other, and they would get excited about who's reading, oh, I really like the book that they shared, so I'm going to take that, and sharing and rotating things among themselves. I think they got a kick out of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think with the younger ones, I've had more success with having them share their favorite titles. We talk about all different kinds of media and what they enjoy. Usually we pick a genre. We might do sci-fi at one meeting, or fantasy, or mystery. And then it seems like with the high school level teens, they seem to be more interested in a more like traditional book club. So yeah, that's been my experience too.
Something else I thought was really fun with the middle schoolers is they would even read their books out loud to each other when they would come together. And I just thought that was so cute. They loved it. It was like middle school story time.
To go along with Carmen's question, someone asked in the chat, do parents attend with their kids at all, or is it just kids for the book clubs? I've never had parents attend any of my things, but what about the panel? What do you?
Yeah, I definitely would not prefer a parent to sit in on a book club, because I do feel like it could stifle sharing from the tweens. Unless it is a parent-child book club. In that case, they are welcome to join. But yeah, in my experience, I've not had any parents try to sit in, but I do try to, at a certain age, encourage the students to attend alone, and parents are usually fine with that. They usually go with that.
And going back to that brain science and developmental stuff, this is a time when kids are really, really developing autonomy, and they really need that separation from their parents. And, it's different to have a teacher or a librarian or an adult who's not their parent to be there to kind of give some oversight and guidance, maybe. But to me, it's just super important that tweens and teens have some time away from their parents. And even if it's not their own parent, if they're in a group, unless there's some special circumstance where there's a special need where the child needs their parent with them, I feel that kids are reluctant to really open up, and we want this to be a safe space for them and for them to have some freedom. But I feel like it's really going to be hindered if there are parents of the attendees in the group, in the activity.
Great. We had another question a little bit earlier about the media specialists at schools. The person indicated that they feel sort of awkward. They're afraid they're going to step on their toes. And so I think the question is really like, how do you approach them without making them feel like you're coming in and taking over and doing their job? And I would hope that we have some media center teachers in this room right now that would be willing to speak out to that. I know the ones I work with are always very eager to have me come in, but to have you actually be here and let us know, give us some insight into how you feel about it would be really amazing.
Sure. So actually at in our system, we are very closely connected with our school system. So we're really lucky in that way that we sort of have, so like we have certain schools that are assigned to each instructor who's a teens instructor. And we do have close connections with our media specialists. So that's always a good opportunity for us. But if you don't, I would just approach it as showing what the library has to offer the media specialists and to the students. I don't think that most media specialists are going to feel like you're invading their territory. I think if you propose coming in every day, yes, they won't appreciate it. But most of them are spread thin, and they appreciate having you come in and supplement what they're offering. So like I was talking about how our system works really closely with the Schools for History Day. That's something where we can supplement what they're already teaching in the classroom. And so things like that where you can actually assist them and be helpful to them is a good opportunity to share some of the library resources and get face time with students in the school setting. So
Any school specialists in the room want to have some insight into what it's like to partner with public librarians? I don't want to call you out. We'd love to hear from you. We're really glad that you're here.
I would love to hear from them, and I'm crossing my fingers that there's some here that were able to join us. I know the middle of the afternoon and a school schedule is tricky, but I can just speak from my own experience. I was a school librarian for 10 years and did public work prior to that for another 10 years, and I never found on either side that there was any competition or any resentment or turf. It was always gratefulness and appreciation of joy of working with another colleague. So I think it's something to keep in mind and just to be sensitive in case, there seems to be any friction there. But usually, like I just put in the chat, my experience, my budget was teeny tiny, and I had to really stretch the dollars for the books that I wanted to bring in and anything, and maybe, audio format or something. I didn't have any extra for maker materials or STEM or a lot of other resources. And just to have that opportunity to bring those to the kids and have them reach students that may not be finding the public library for whatever reason on their own through their own family, it's like a win-win. So I would encourage that collaboration as much as possible, and seeing what you can do and when is a convenient time to work with them.
Thanks, Carrie. That's a great insight.
I would also just say, make sure that you're collaborating. So you're talking to your media specialist about, what kinds of things that they have that you don't have, and that you have that they don't have, and how you can pair those up together so that you're not, trying to compete, but work, in tandem with each other. Like Carrie was mentioning the digital resources. So I don't know if every system in the state has the student virtual cards, but I know in Cecil County we do. And so every student has access to Hoopla and Libby. And so, when I was doing the high school book club, we relied on Hoopla heavily. So all the kids could be reading the same book at the same time.
Great, thank you. If there's any last real quick burning questions or thoughts that anyone wants to put out there, we're running short on time. Our next session starts very promptly at 2:05, and we want to give folks a moment to take a quick break. The slides and the handouts are already on the Teen Connect website for you to go through if there's anything you wanted to peruse a little more slowly or go back to and reference. This afternoon, in the next session, you have a choice between teen mental health awareness, which is session 3A, and teen self-expression / teen activism, which is 3B. And so we hope you will join us. You will be able to join us for one of those presentations. And again, that's starting in about 10 minutes. Yes, Cheryl, did you have
Can I
something?
just very quickly thank you and mention that I was scrolling through the chat and I saw that Lorelei had posted a response about incentives, about buttons. And yes, we purchased a button maker for our branch, and once in a while we put out like old comics or old magazines, graphic novels, and let them make their own buttons. And yes, they love it. So if you can do that, or if you can borrow a button maker, that's a great, great option without having food these days.
I feel like the button maker is one of the best investments a teen librarian can have. My population they have all the latest technology, so they don't care if I have a Sphero or not. But a button maker they don't have at home, and so they flock to those things. So Kat has put she's dropped the sign-in sheet to get your CE credits and to get the recording. If you haven't already done so, please sign in so that you can get credit for being here today. If no one has any, I'll linger here for a second if no one has any last minute questions, but if you'd like well, first I want to thank our panel, Anita, Cheryl, and Julie, and our helpers today, Kat and Carmen and Carrie, for being here. But otherwise, I'd like to give you a little break before our next session so everybody can run to the bathroom. So if anybody